Hey everyone, and thanks for jumping back into the Cryptoverse. Today, we're going to talk about Bitcoin, but specifically, we're going to discuss the Bitcoin dominance. If you guys like the content, make sure you subscribe to the channel, give the video a thumbs up, and also check out the Telegram channel, which you can find a link to in the description below. Let's go ahead and jump in. So, the way that I'm going to structure this video is we're first going to talk about the Bitcoin dominance, where we include stablecoins. Then we're going to talk about the Bitcoin dominance where we exclude stablecoins. They tell slightly different stories, and so I want to look at both examples. Okay, so first we're going to talk about it where we include stablecoins, and we'll just sort of break that down for a little bit, and then at the latter half of the video we'll talk about it without stablecoins. So if you're unfamiliar with the Bitcoin dominance, basically it's just if you take the market capitalization of Bitcoin and divide it by the market capitalization of the entire asset class, you get the Bitcoin dominance. And it just shows you what percentage of Bitcoin's market cap makes up the entire market cap of the asset class. And so it can be useful in sort of knowing what season it is. A lot of people like to call alt season, that kind of stuff, to talk about where we potentially are within a market cycle, etc. So the dominance, I do think, is useful. Yeah, I don't believe everyone agrees with that statement, but I do find it useful in trying to navigate these markets. So if you're not familiar with the Bitcoin dominance, one of the things that usually happens at the, near the end of major bull markets is that you'll see the dominance sort of like fall off a cliff. Okay, so like at the end of the 2017 bull market, you really saw the dominance really shooting down fairly quickly, and it shot down throughout most of 2017, and we know that most of 2017 was a bull market. And then at this point right here, it shot up when Bitcoin went on its own parabolic rally in Q4 of 2017. That was sort of like the final blow off top rally that lasted until about mid-December or so, which is where Bitcoin peaked at around 19.8K or something like that. And then following that in January, you can see the dominance sort of fell off a cliff again. And then from there, it sort of slowly went back up. Now, if you're unfamiliar with where I stand on the Bitcoin dominance, my thesis going into going into 2022 for sure, but I was also arguing it back over here as well in Q4, is that the dominance would be starting, a trend where it would ultimately go much higher. Okay. Now, since then, at least since the beginning of 2022, we started around 40%. We came up, we put in a low, and basically my argument over here was that no matter what Bitcoin does, the dominance should go up, right? So, and basically one of the reasons we talked about this, if we go look at the Bitcoin chart on the daily, one of the things that we were looking at was, really it was sort of this pattern here of putting in a low, a higher low, and then a rejection off of the 200-day moving average, and then a failure to put in a higher low. So this is what we were looking at, okay? And if you don't remember why, the reason why is because if you go back to 2018, we were looking at something very similar, okay? Where you had a low, a higher low, a rejection off the 200-day, and then a failure to put in a higher low. And when that happened, so at this point, which was also this point right here, which was in April of 2022, we speculated that, all right, well, if and when Bitcoin breaks down, because it does tend to break down these things in bear markets, the dominance should go up. And in April, the dominance really did start to go up, okay? And I fully anticipated this rally. Whether it was, just pure luck is up for debate. But I fully anticipated this rally. What I did not really anticipate was for it to just pull back basically to where it was before it made that rally. Okay, so I wasn't really anticipating that. Now, one of the things that I think about when I look at this is to say, well, we are clearly in a downtrend right now that's marked fairly well by Heikin-Ashi candles. We know that Heikin-Ashi candles, in a downtrend, it's a healthy downtrend when you see large candle bodies, no overshadows or few overshadows and undershadows. So you're seeing undershadows and you're not really seeing many overshadows, right? Just maybe a couple since this downtrend started. But then I always start to think, okay, well, if or when will it turn around, right? When will it go back, back the other way? And, if I were to just speculate, one of the things I would have to think about is what are some major events coming up at which point that the narrative could shift, and maybe there's going to be some various reweightings of portfolios. And I think obviously the biggest thing is the merge for Ethereum. Okay, obviously there's certainly a lot of momentum behind that right now. And honestly, there's more momentum than I thought there'd be on the Ether Bitcoin valuation. And that theoretically is coming up in September, okay, where it transitions from proof of work to proof of stake, which is just over a month away. I mean, I think they said the week of September 19th. Obviously, that could be subject to change. They could always kick the can down the road. They've been kicking the can down the road for years and years and years. If you told me in 2017 we'd be sitting in 2022, in August of 2022, and the merge still would not have happened, I probably wouldn't have believed you. But here we are. So I wouldn't be that surprised to see the dominance start to turn back around, maybe in September if it hasn't already by then. And the reason is because, again, you're going into this major event for Ethereum, and it seems like a reasonable place where people might reallocate some of their portfolios. So that's sort of what I'm thinking. Again, I say that with sort of the perspective as not really having anticipated this pullback. Okay, so you can always take it with a grain of salt if you want, but not really anticipating this pullback on the Bitcoin dominance. Again, this is not including stablecoins, and then just trying to figure out, okay, where could it turn back around? One thing that's interesting is that September has actually often marked an inflection point in the Bitcoin dominance. So what I've noticed is that around the September timeframe, if the Bitcoin dominance is going up, that's where it usually starts to go down. And if it's going down, that's where it starts to go back up. So for instance, if I were to sort of draw a line at last September, if we just sort of draw a line like the middle of September, you can see that the dominance was going down, and then September is where it made that surge back up to the upside. It was relatively short-lived, right? It was relatively short-lived, but that's where you saw at least some relief back up to the upside. And if you go to the year before, you'll see a very similar thing, right? You'll see that the dominance, if you go to the middle of September, that's where the dominance started to go back up. So, not only in 2020 did you see the dominance surge back up to the upside with an inflection point in September, but you also saw that happen in 2021 with an inflection point in September. And so, when I was thinking about this, just because this was in recent memory, I decided to go back and look at some of the other years to see if it's, if there are any similarities. And there were. If you go look at 2019, you'll see that we were in an uptrend actually, and September was ultimately an inflection point, but not for it to go up, but it was for it to go down. But at this point, it was already going up, right? It was going up into September, and then September served as sort of an inflection point to send it back down. And then if you go back the year before that, if you look at 2018, it also served as sort of an inflection point, right? Where the dominance was on a crazy rally in 2018 going into September, and then it was after September that it actually started to cool off for a while. And then the last one I'll show will be, will just be 2017. And if you go look at where 2017 was, and you look at what September looked like, was it also an inflection point? You could argue that it was, and then after this, the dominance went up for a while. So interestingly, every single September has sort of served as an inflection point for the Bitcoin dominance. Not necessarily to say that the dominance was going to go up. Sometimes it was just to say, okay, whatever the trend is, it ultimately reversed as you went into Q4. I don't really think it's any surprise by anyone here that Bitcoin does tend to outperform most everything. Not always, but a lot of times in Q4, especially in the early part of Q4, I would say, it tends to take over for a while. I mean, it did it in October of 2021. The minute Q4 started, it was on October 1st, the dominance started to go up. Here as well. In 2020, it was October, November, and December, and even going into early January, the dominance was really shooting much higher. And you can sort of see, though, there were some times, though, in, say, the latter half of 2018 and then the latter half of 2019, the dominance had been going up until that point, and then it actually reversed course the other way. So it'll be interesting to see if this time, if this September ultimately serves as an inflection point for the dominance again. just sort of draw that line, it would be somewhere around here at the week of September 19th is theoretically when the merge is going to take place. So if the dominance were to continue to stay weak until then, you could see something like this where it comes down, finds some type of inflection point in September, and then maybe goes back up, or perhaps it'll go down even further and then come back up. But this is just something to consider as we sort of prepare for some things to change once Ethereum transitions to proof of stake, and we really see if where things are ultimately headed. Now that I've spoken about it with regards to stablecoins, remember this includes stablecoins. I also think it's useful to not include stablecoins as well. Stablecoins were a much smaller percentage of crypto in prior years, right? I mean, over here they were basically nothing in terms of the overall percentage of where they were. But today they take up a much larger percentage. And I mean, in the top 5, right, you have 2 stablecoins that take up a significant amount of the overall market cap. So in order to do that, I'm just going to go over to my website. If we look at the Bitcoin dominance without including stablecoins, the dominance is currently sitting at just below 48%. Okay, so with stablecoins, it's sitting just below 42%. Without stablecoins, it's sitting at just below 48%. All right. Now, if you look at the trend in the dominance over the last year, it does look a little different than it does when you include stablecoins. So when you include stablecoins, you can see that over the last year, we've mostly just been range bound here, right, between 39 to 49%, right? 39 to 49%, we've just been range bound in there. Not a whole lot has happened. And despite the fact that there's people on both sides saying the dominance should go up, the dominance should go down, it's more or less just been range bound this entire time and is currently back in a downtrend. When you exclude stablecoins, you see a slightly different story. Okay, so the top before the most recent rally on the Bitcoin dominance was actually at around 48%, or 49%, I should say, which is actually very similar to to what it was over here, right? However, the most recent rally that took the dominance out into June, you can see that it actually broke above that prior high, and it actually put in a higher high. Now the question, right, is we have a low. Okay, so if we zoom into the sort of lower time frames over here, you can see that we had a low in the Bitcoin dominance in February at around 41%. It then had a higher low at around 43.5% in April. And then currently it's sitting at around 47.865%. So, I guess I look at this and I just have to wonder, is this not just going to be a higher low, or will the fundamental market structure of crypto completely change? I mean, I will stay a macro bull on the Bitcoin dominance, but I say that as also, completely recognizing that I was not really anticipating such a steep pullback in the Bitcoin dominance over the last couple of months. All right. You could argue, I mean, just to sort of point a few things out, you could argue that it's similar to this move right here. I mean, I'm not really in the camp that history always has to repeat in the exact same way. I mean, I think that markets will continue to evolve and things will change. I don't think the Bitcoin dominance will ever go back to 70%, right? I mean, I could see it hitting 60% again, but I don't really ever see it going back. I mean, you can see these levels over here. It hit all the way up to 72, 73% or something. So it's an interesting observation. And one of the reasons why this is interesting to look at is if you actually look at the Bitcoin dominance right here and you compare it to the Ethereum dominance, right, which I think is useful to look at. And I'm going to go ahead and shift this to a new scale, so that you can kind of really see what's going on here. Let me, no, I don't really need it on log, I guess, but let me shift this to a regular scale. So one of the things that you can look at is that in 2018, in fact, when the dominance of Bitcoin surged back down, right, it actually corresponded to the Ethereum dominance surging up. And the Ethereum dominance surged up to approximately 20%, right? So you can see the blue line right here is the Ethereum dominance in 2018. You can see that it hit a local bottom. I mean, it is fairly similar, right? If let me remove this line so maybe you can see it a little bit better. If you look at the bottom of the Ethereum dominance in March 2018, it sort of bottomed around 16%. It then rallied up to around 20%, right? So 16% to 20%. And during that time, the dominance of Bitcoin dropped from around 51% down to around 39%. So it fell about 22%, okay? But it went from around 51 back down to 39%. During that time, the Ethereum dominance went up from 16 to 20%, okay? So you go to the present day, you'll see something that's not that, dissimilar from it, right? We have the Ethereum dominance went all the way down to about 15%, so it went just a bit lower. And so far, it has made it up to about 19%. If it made it up to 20%, which is a possibility, if Ethereum does continue to rally into the merge in September, then you could be looking at at something like that, where you see that rally going into the merge, and then sort of things shift back the other way once we get out of all that hype and we get into the last part of the year. So I thought it was at least worthwhile to talk about the Bitcoin dominance. I know it's been a little while since we spoke about it, and I think the last time my sort of thinking on the Bitcoin dominance in 2022 has basically been, since we started the year, that the dominance would ultimately go much higher. I would have expected it to be higher than it is right now by this point. But we had this major pullback here, which is very similar. I mean, again, it's probably should have been anticipated a little bit better. But something like that. So we'll see where it ultimately goes. I mean, I also know that people want to talk about, okay, well, what are invalidation levels and whatnot. If the dominance were to continue to just stay very, very weak, even throughout the rest of the year, then at that point, it would probably be worth talking about just a fundamental change to the market, which I know a lot of people, that's what they believe. But right now, I think it's worthwhile to see where the Bitcoin dominance heads as we go into the merge in September, to see if if the dominance continues to remain weak, or will September serve as an inflection point in the Bitcoin dominance before trickling back up in the fourth quarter of the year, which it has done before, and will probably continue to do so in years to come. All right, guys, I think that'll wrap it up for the video. Make sure you subscribe, give the video a thumbs up. Check out Into the Cryptoverse Premium at intothecryptoverse.com, and I will see you next time. Bye.